Daniel Brooks had never asked to leave early. 3 years straight, every single day, on time, in place, fulfilling the role of the perfect executive assistant. Until that afternoon, when he glanced at his watch, stood up, and said something that made the entire floor fall silent. "I need to leave early. I have a date." Victoria Hale, the ice-cold CEO of Hale Dynamics, froze mid-reach for her cigarette. The room went dead quiet. A date? The man who'd been beside her every single day had a life she'd never touched? Daniel Brooks arrived at Hale Dynamics at 7:43 a.m. every weekday. Not 7:40. Not 7:45. Exactly 7:43. He'd unlock Victoria's office, calibrate the thermostat to precisely 68 degrees, brew her coffee dark roast, no cream, half a sugar, and have the morning briefing packet positioned at a 45-degree angle on her desk before she walked through the door at 8. For 3 years, this rhythm had never broken. The other assistants in the building envied him. Victoria Hale was notoriously difficult. She'd cycled through 11 assistants in her first 2 years as CEO. Some lasted 3 months. One lasted 9 days. Daniel lasted because he understood the unspoken rule. He answered emails in under 2 minutes. He anticipated scheduling conflicts 3 weeks out. He never asked personal questions, never lingered in doorways waiting for approval, never treated her authority as an invitation for familiarity. The executives on the 14th floor called him the Phantom. He moved through the office like a well-programmed automation, efficient, invisible, essential. But there was one detail that didn't quite fit the image. On his desk, tucked between the triple monitor setup and a stack of quarterly reports, sat a coffee mug with faded lettering. "World's okayest dad." Nobody asked about it. Nobody asked Daniel about anything. He preferred it that way. Work was work. Home was home. The two never touched. Until today. Victoria had just finished a brutal 3-hour meeting with the board. Her neck ached. Her patience was gone. She stepped into her office and found Daniel already there, reorganizing her notes from the presentation. "Reschedule the Singapore call," she said without looking up. "Push it to Thursday. Same time." "Already done," Daniel replied. "I also moved your dinner with the Arcadia investors to Friday. The reservations confirmed." She nodded. "And the Miller contract? Legal signed off this morning. It's in your inbox." Victoria allowed herself a brief exhale. This was why Daniel worked. He didn't need instructions. He didn't need praise. He simply knew. She sank into her chair and reached for the slim silver case on her desk. Inside, a single cigarette. She didn't smoke often, only when the pressure became unbearable. Today qualified. She lit it, took a slow drag, and let the tension drain from her shoulders. Daniel didn't comment. He never did. That was the thing about him. He existed in her orbit without disrupting it. He understood boundaries better than anyone she'd ever worked with, which was why what happened next felt like the ground splitting open beneath her feet. Daniel glanced at his watch. It was 4:47 p.m. He stood. "Miss Hale," he said, his voice calm and even. "I need to leave early today." Victoria blinked. In 3 years, Daniel had never left before 6:30 p.m. He'd worked through holidays, stayed late during crises, covered weekend emergencies without complaint. "Something wrong?" she asked, keeping her tone neutral. "No," he said. "I just have a date." The cigarette paused halfway to her lips. A date. The words hung in the air like smoke. Victoria's mind went blank. Then it raced. Then it stumbled over itself, trying to find footing. Daniel had a date? With someone? Of course, with someone. What kind of question was that? But who? When had this happened? How had she not known? She realized, with a strange jolt, that she knew almost nothing about Daniel's life outside this building. She didn't know where he lived, didn't know his favorite food, didn't know if he had family, friends, hobbies. She'd never asked, and he'd never offered. The silence stretched. Daniel waited, his expression unchanged. Professional. Victoria forced herself to speak. Of course. Go ahead. He nodded once, gathered his things, and walked toward the door. And for reasons she couldn't name, Victoria felt something crack inside her chest. Victoria Hale hadn't always been cold. She'd learned it. At 23, fresh out of business school, she'd joined a mid-tier consulting firm with stars in her eyes and a portfolio full of ideas. She'd believed in collaboration, in mentorship, in the possibility that hard work and genuine care could coexist with ambition. That belief died in her second year. She'd been passed over for a promotion she'd earned. The position went to a man with half her output and twice her connections. When she asked why, her supervisor told her she was too emotional and not assertive enough. So she became assertive. She stopped smiling in meetings, stopped softening her critiques, stopped asking for input when she already knew the answer. It worked. By 30, she was a VP. By 34, she was CEO of Hale Dynamics, a logistics firm her father had built and nearly bankrupted before his death. She rebuilt it, ruthlessly, efficiently, alone. People respected her, feared her, kept their distance, and she told herself that was exactly what she wanted. Except sometimes late at night, in her too-large penthouse overlooking the river, she felt the weight of that distance like a hand pressed against her throat. Daniel had been different from the start. He didn't try to impress her, didn't flatter, didn't angle for her approval. He simply did his job. At first, she'd found it refreshing, then essential, then comforting. She never said it aloud, but Daniel had become the one constant in her life. The one person who saw her at her worst, exhausted, frustrated, sharp-edged, and never flinched. She trusted him. More than that, she relied on him. And somewhere along the way, without realizing it, she'd started to feel possessive of that reliability. When Daniel mentioned personal plans, she felt a strange tightness in her chest. When he smiled at his phone during lunch breaks, she wondered who he was texting. When he declined after work drinks with the team, she told herself it didn't matter. But it did. And now, hearing him say the word date, Victoria realized something she'd been avoiding for months. She was jealous. Not of the work, not of his time. Of whoever got to see the version of Daniel Brooks that existed outside these walls. The meeting had been brutal. 2 hours of back and forth with the finance team over Q3 projections. Numbers that didn't align. Strategies that clashed. Egos that refused to bend. Victoria had held her ground, as always. But by the time the room cleared, she felt scraped raw. Daniel had been taking notes the entire time. Silent, focused, dependable. When the last executive left, Victoria leaned back in her chair and pressed her palms against her temples. "Reschedule my 5, she muttered. "I need 20 minutes. Already done," Daniel said. She didn't thank him. She didn't need to. That was their language. Efficiency, anticipation. Silence that meant understanding. Victoria reached for her cigarette case. The cool metal was grounding. She flipped it open, pulled out a single slim cigarette, and brought it to her lips. The click of the lighter. The first drag. The slow exhale. Her shoulders dropped half an inch, and then Daniel stood up. Victoria's eyes flicked toward him. It was 4:47 p.m. Early, even by normal standards. "Miss Hale," he said, his voice steady. "I need to leave early today." Her hand froze. 3 years. Not once. "Something wrong?" she asked. "No." He adjusted his watch. The cigarette burned between her fingers. A date. The word echoed in her skull like a bell she couldn't unring. Victoria stared at him, searched his face for irony, for humor, for anything that would explain why her chest suddenly felt like it was being crushed. But Daniel's expression didn't change. He wasn't joking. He wasn't apologizing. He was simply stating a fact. And somehow, that made it worse. "A date," she repeated, her voice flat. "With someone." Daniel's brow furrowed slightly. That's generally how dates work. She wanted to ask who, where. When did this happen? How long had this been going on? But the questions felt too personal, too revealing. So instead, she said nothing. She took another drag from her cigarette, slower this time, and let the silence stretch. Daniel waited. He was good at waiting. Finally, Victoria forced herself to speak. Go ahead. Thank you. He picked up his bag leather, worn at the edges, and walked toward the door. Victoria watched him go, and the moment the door clicked shut, something inside her collapsed. She stubbed out the cigarette with more force than necessary. Her hands were shaking. Daniel's footsteps faded down the hallway. Victoria sat alone in her office, staring at the half-burned cigarette in the ashtray. She told herself to let it go, told herself it didn't matter, told herself that Daniel's personal life was none of her business, but her mind wouldn't stop. Who was she? Was it someone from the office? No. Daniel never mixed work and personal life. Someone he'd met online? At a gym? Through friends? Did he have friends? Victoria realized, with a nauseating clarity, that she didn't know. She didn't know anything. For 3 years, Daniel had been the most reliable person in her life. He knew her schedule better than she did, knew when she needed coffee, when she needed silence, when she needed someone to simply handle things without being asked. But she'd never once asked him about himself. She'd treated him like a function, a tool. And now he was walking out the door to meet someone who probably knew his favorite movie. His childhood stories, the way he laughed when he wasn't being professional. Victoria's chest tightened. This wasn't anger. It was panic. She stood abruptly, grabbed her coat, and walked to the window. 14 floors below, Daniel emerged from the building. He checked his phone, smiled at something on the screen, and started walking toward the parking garage. Victoria's pulse hammered. She imagined him meeting someone, a woman with an easy laugh and no walls, someone who didn't make him keep his coffee mug hidden, someone who asked questions and actually listened to the answers. The image made her feel sick. Before she could talk herself out of it, Victoria grabbed her purse and headed for the elevator. She caught up with him in the lobby. Daniel, he turned, surprised. Miss Hale? She didn't have a plan. Didn't have an excuse, but she couldn't let him leave. Not like this. She stopped. Swallowed. I need to ask you something. Daniel's expression shifted, curious, cautious. Of course. Victoria's hand tightened around her purse strap, and then, before she could stop herself, she reached out and caught his wrist. Daniel froze. Victoria's fingers were wrapped around his wrist, not tight, but firm enough that he couldn't move without pulling away deliberately. Her pulse was visible at her throat. Miss Hale, he said carefully. What's wrong? She didn't let go. For a long moment, she just stood there, breathing too fast, looking at him like she was trying to solve a problem she didn't have the equation for. Finally, she spoke. Why haven't you ever asked me out? The question hit the air like a stone through glass. Daniel blinked. What? You heard me. Her voice was quiet, strained. 3 years, Daniel. You've been right there. Every day, and you never. She stopped, shook her head. I don't understand, she said, and for the first time since he'd known her, Victoria Hale sounded lost. Daniel's throat went dry. This was the woman who'd stared down hostile board members without flinching, who'd negotiated multi-million-dollar deals with the calm of someone ordering coffee. And now she was standing in front of him, trembling, asking him why he'd never crossed a line she'd spent 3 years reinforcing. You never wanted that, he said quietly. How do you know what I wanted? Her voice cracked. Did you ever ask? No, he exhaled. Because you made it very clear that personal questions weren't part of the job. Victoria flinched. That's not. She let go of his wrist, stepped back. That's not what I meant. Then what did you mean? She pressed her fingers to her temples. I don't know. Her eyes met his. I thought maybe you didn't see me that way. Like I was just the job, the title, nothing else." Daniel stared at her. 3 years of silence, 3 years of carefully maintained distance. And now, all at once, the truth was spilling out in a fluorescent-lit lobby where anyone could walk by. "You think I don't see you?" he said, his voice low. Victoria's breath hitched. "I see you every day, Victoria." He'd never used her first name before. It felt dangerous. Necessary. "I see when you're exhausted. When you're frustrated, when you're pretending everything's fine because you think showing weakness will cost you." Her eyes widened. "I see all of it," he continued. "But I also see the walls, and I respected them, because that's what you needed. What if," she stopped, swallowed. "What if I don't need them anymore?" The question hung between them. Daniel's chest ached. "Then you should have said something," he said gently. "Before I made plans with someone else." Victoria's face went pale. Daniel pulled out his phone. "Here," he said, turning the screen toward her. Victoria looked down. It was a text message. "Lucas. Dad, don't forget. 6, you promised." Below it, a photo. A hand-drawn birthday invitation covered in crayon stars and misspelled words. Victoria's breath stopped. "Your son?" "Yes." Daniel pocketed the phone. "His name is Lucas. He turned 8 today. I promised I'd take him to dinner." The world tilted. Victoria felt heat flood her face, shame, relief, confusion, all crashing together. "You have a son," she said faintly. "I do. I didn't know. You never asked." The words weren't cruel, just factual, and they cut deeper than any anger could have. Victoria covered her mouth with one hand. "God. Daniel, I'm so sorry. I thought. I know what you thought." He studied her. "And I understand why. But Victoria, you've worked with me for 3 years. You know my schedule down to the minute. You know how I take my coffee, but you've never once asked me about my life outside this building." She couldn't argue, couldn't defend herself, because he was right. "I'm sorry," she said again, quieter this time. Daniel's expression softened. "I'm not angry, but I need you to understand something. Lucas is the most important person in my life, and if we're going to have this conversation, whatever this is, that's not going to change." "I wouldn't want it to," Victoria said quickly. He raised an eyebrow. "You say that now, but you don't know what it means. Cancelled plans, early mornings, school plays in the middle of the workday. I can handle that. Can you?" Daniel's gaze didn't waver. "And I won't let anyone, not even you, make him feel like he's competing for my attention." Victoria's throat tightened. She thought of her own childhood. Boarding schools, nannies, a father who measured love in stock portfolios. "He shouldn't have to compete," she said. "He should always come first." Something in Daniel's expression shifted. He checked his watch. 5:03 p.m. Then he did something that surprised both of them. "Do you want to come with me?" Victoria stared at him. "What? To dinner?" Daniel clarified. "It's just Lucas and me. Pizza place downtown. Nothing fancy. You want me to crash your son's birthday dinner? I'm inviting you." "That's not crashing." He hesitated. "But I need to be clear about something. If you come, it's not as my boss. It's as someone I'm allowing into my life, and that comes with rules." "Rules." "Lucas doesn't know about you. He doesn't know what I do for a living beyond office work, and I'd like to keep it that way for now." Hale. Not the CEO. Just a person. Victoria felt something strange unfold in her chest. For 3 years, her title had been armor, protection, power, and now Daniel was asking her to take it off. "I can do that," she said. "Can you?" "Yes." She met his eyes. "I want to." Daniel studied her for a long moment. Then he nodded. "Okay. But if he asks questions, I'm going to answer them honestly. And if at any point you feel uncomfortable, You can leave. No hard feelings. Understood. And Victoria? He paused. Thank you. For apologizing. She didn't trust herself to speak. So she just nodded. They walked to the parking garage in silence. Daniel's car was a modest sedan, clean but worn, with a booster seat in the back and a collection of action figures scattered across the floor. Victoria slid into the passenger seat, feeling like she'd stepped into a different dimension. Daniel started the engine. He's going to ask a lot of questions. Fair warning, I can handle questions. Not like these. He pulled out of the garage. Lucas doesn't have a filter. If he's curious, he asks, and he's very curious. Victoria felt a flutter of nerves. What kind of questions? Last week he asked our mail carrier if she believed in ghosts. Week before that, he asked the dentist why adults lie about vegetables tasting good. Despite everything, Victoria smiled. He sounds smart. He is. Daniel's voice softened. Being a single parent? He glanced at her. Yeah, what happened to his mother? The question came out before she could stop it. Daniel's jaw tightened. For a moment, she thought he wouldn't answer. Then she left when he was 2. Said she wasn't ready. Didn't want to be tied down. Victoria's chest ached. I'm sorry. Don't be. We're better off. He turned onto the main road. Lucas doesn't remember her. And honestly, I'm glad. He deserves better than someone who saw him as an obligation. They drove in silence for a few blocks. Then Victoria said quietly, You're a good father. Daniel's hands tightened on the wheel. I'm trying to be. La Rosa Trattoria was tucked between a bookstore and a laundromat on a street Victoria had never noticed before. The sign was hand-painted. The windows glowed warm yellow. Inside, checkered tablecloths, mismatched chairs, the smell of garlic and fresh bread. It was nothing like the restaurants Victoria frequented. No valet, no wine list, no minimalist decor. It was perfect. Lucas was already there, sitting in a booth by the window. He looked exactly like Daniel. Same dark hair, same serious eyes. But where Daniel was controlled, Lucas was pure energy. He was coloring on the paper tablecloth, humming to himself, legs swinging. The moment he saw Daniel, his face lit up. Daniel grinned a real grin, wide and unguarded, and Victoria realized she'd never seen him smile like that. Hey, buddy. Happy birthday. Lucas launched himself out of the booth and wrapped his arms around Daniel's waist. Then he noticed Victoria. Who's that? This is Victoria, Daniel said. She's a friend from work. I invited her to join us. Is that okay? Lucas looked her up and down with the frank curiosity of an 8-year-old. Do you like pizza? Victoria blinked. Yes, good. Dad's friends have to like pizza. It's a rule. She smiled. I didn't know there were rules. There's lots of rules. Lucas climbed back into the booth. Like, no phones at the table. And you have to try the garlic knots even if you think you're full. And if you don't finish your pizza, you have to take it home, because wasting food is bad. Victoria slid into the seat across from him. Those sound like good rules. I made them up, Lucas said proudly. Daniel sat beside his son. Lucas is very big on rules. Rules are important, Lucas said. Otherwise, everything's chaos. Victoria met Daniel's eyes across the table. He looked lighter. This was the version of him she'd never seen, the one who existed outside fluorescent lights and quarterly reports, and she wanted to know him. The waiter came. They ordered pepperoni for Lucas, margarita for Victoria, half and half for Daniel. Lucas peppered Victoria with questions. What was her favorite color? Blue. Did she have any pets? No. What was the coolest place she'd ever been? Iceland. Did she know how to juggle? Absolutely not. Victoria answered each one honestly and found herself relaxing in a way she hadn't in years. Lucas was easy to talk to. He didn't care about her title. didn't care about her reputation. He just wanted to know if she liked dinosaurs. When the pizza arrived, Lucas launched into a story about his school science project, something involving volcanoes and too much baking soda. Daniel listened with the patience of someone who'd heard the story 3 times already but still found it delightful. And Victoria watched them both. The way Daniel cut Lucas's pizza into smaller pieces without being asked. The way Lucas leaned into his father's side when he laughed. The way they communicated in shorthand, inside jokes, shared looks, a language built over years. This was love. Uncomplicated, unguarded. And Victoria realized, with startling clarity, that she wanted to be part of it. Then Lucas asked the question that changed everything. "Dad," he said, voice suddenly serious, "have you found a mom for me yet?" Daniel froze. Victoria's breath caught. Lucas looked between them, confused. "What? You said you were looking." "I said," Daniel corrected gently, "that if I met someone special, I'd introduce you." "That's not the same thing." "But you brought Victoria. As a friend? Is she special?" Daniel's eyes flicked to Victoria. She couldn't breathe. "Yes," he said quietly. "She is." Lucas beamed. "Then she could be my mom." "Lucas, I'm just saying. She likes pizza. She knows about velociraptors. She's not weird." Victoria laughed a startled, genuine sound. Daniel rubbed his face. "Buddy, it doesn't work like that." "Why not?" "Because relationships are complicated. And being a parent is a big responsibility. You can't just decide someone's your mom because they like the same dinosaurs." Lucas frowned. "That's a dumb rule." "Maybe. But it's reality." Lucas turned to Victoria. "Do you like my dad?" Victoria's heart hammered. She could feel Daniel's gaze on her. "Yes," she said. "I do." "Then what's the problem?" Out of the mouths of children. The drive back was quiet. Lucas had fallen asleep in the back seat, his head lolling against the window, one hand still clutching a leftover garlic knot. Daniel drove carefully, taking turns slowly so as not to wake him. Victoria stared out the window, replaying the entire evening in her head. Finally, she spoke. "I'm sorry." Daniel glanced at her. "For what?" "For not seeing you. For 3 years." She swallowed. "You were right. I knew everything about your schedule. Nothing about your life. And that's not okay." "You were my boss," Daniel said. Boundaries made sense. "No, it was more than that." Victoria turned to face him. "I was scared." "Of what?" "Of letting anyone get close. Of being vulnerable. Of," she exhaled, "of wanting something I didn't think I deserved." Daniel's hands tightened on the wheel. "What do you want, Victoria?" She didn't answer right away. When she did, her voice was barely a whisper. "I want to know you. The real you. Not just the assistant who makes my life easier. I want to know what you read. What you dream about. What makes you laugh when no one's watching. Because I care about you." The admission felt like stepping off a cliff. And I think I have for a long time. I just didn't let myself admit it. Daniel was quiet for a long moment. "Then I thought I was just a tool to you." Victoria's chest tightened. "I know. And I'm sorry. That was wrong. You're not a tool. You're—" She searched for the right words. "You're the best part of my day, every day. And I didn't realize it until I thought I was losing you." Daniel pulled up in front of her building. He put the car in park but didn't turn off the engine. "I need you to understand something," he said. "Lucas isn't just my son. He's my entire world. And anyone who's part of my life has to be part of his. That's non-negotiable. I understand. Do you?" He turned to face her fully. "Because it's not just about liking him. It's about showing up, being consistent, being someone he can count on. And if you're not ready for that, if there's even a chance you'll decide it's too much, I need to know now." Victoria met his eyes. "I'm not going to pretend I know how to do this. I don't have a great track record with relationships, and I've never been around kids much." Daniel's expression didn't change. "But," she continued, "I want to try. And I don't say that lightly. I don't do anything lightly. If I'm committing to this to you, to Lucas, I'm all in." Daniel studied her face. Then, slowly, he nodded. Okay, we can try." Slowly. No pressure, no expectations. He paused. "But if at any point it feels like it's not working, we stop. For Lucas's sake." "Agreed." Daniel reached across the console. His hand found hers. For a moment, they just sat there, fingers intertwined, breathing in the strange new reality they'd stumbled into. Then Daniel said, "You did good tonight." With him, Victoria smiled. "He's a great kid." "He is." Daniel's thumb brushed across her knuckles. "And he liked you." "That matters. What about you?" Victoria asked quietly. Daniel's lips twitched. "I wouldn't be here if I didn't." "Then why didn't you ever say anything?" "Because you scared me." Victoria blinked. "I scared you?" "Terrified me." He smiled faintly. "You're brilliant, powerful, completely out of my league, and I was just the guy who scheduled your meetings. You're so much more than that." "Maybe." He squeezed her hand. "But I didn't think you'd ever see it that way." "I see it now." Daniel held her gaze. Then he leaned across the console and pressed a soft kiss to her cheek. It was brief, gentle, and it felt like a promise. Victoria returned to her penthouse alone. The lights turned on automatically. The space stretched wide and silent around her. Usually, the quiet felt heavy. Tonight, it felt different. She set her purse down, slipped off her heels, and walked to the window. The city glittered below. Thousands of lights, thousands of lives. For years, Victoria had stood at this window and felt separate from it all. Untouchable, alone. But tonight, she felt connected. To Daniel, to Lucas, to the possibility that maybe, just maybe, she didn't have to do everything alone. Her phone buzzed. A text from Daniel. "Daniel, Lucas wants to know if you'll come to his soccer game next Saturday." Victoria's heart swelled. "Victoria, I'll be there." "Daniel, fair warning, he's not very good, but he tries hard." "Victoria, that's all that matters." A pause. Then, "Daniel, thank you for tonight." "Victoria, thank you for inviting me." "Daniel, good night, Victoria." "Victoria, good night, Daniel." She set the phone down and stood there, staring at the screen. For the first time in years, Victoria Hale wasn't afraid of what she felt. She wasn't afraid of wanting something, of wanting someone, of wanting a life that was messy and complicated and real. She thought about Lucas's question. "Is she special?" And Daniel's answer. "Yes, she is." Victoria closed her eyes. She didn't know where this was going. Didn't know if she'd be good at it. Didn't know if she could be the person Daniel and Lucas needed. But she wanted to try. And that was enough. For now, it was enough. Outside, the city hummed. Inside, Victoria Hale smiled. And for the first time in a very long time, her apartment didn't feel empty. It felt like the beginning of something. Something worth fighting for.